I have to address this, deal with this, stop pretending, creating this facade that I have it all together, and address, go deep, and forgive myself for making the mistakes. That way I'm able to deal with the children that I'm servicing and help them heal along the process. When you ask yourself, what role should a woman play? You pick yourself up as a woman, you dust yourself off, and you rise above it. And while you're rising yourself above it, you reach back and you bring another woman and you empower her with the knowledge that you've gained. That makes the circle complete. That's how we would look at it.
Can I just add one thing that Dr. Todman mentioned about? I believe Dr. Todman spoke about with empowering women to have that voice and to really check that young man out. You were talking about making sure that you know who you select. And my husband came up with the interview, he calls it the interview. Before, ladies, men, before you look at that person that you're so in love with, don't let that love bug have you just so soon. It's like you just lose your mind. Remember to do the interview. De-interview. Ask questions. Get the history, the background. Find out if they're lying to you. They tell you they have a job, but they just hang around the corner. Do the interview. Find out their background, how they treat their parents, their mother, their father, their sisters. Do the interview. Young people, do the interview. The people you have children with, do the interview.
It's more like an investigation, by the way.
Oh, thank you. The investigation. Do the investigation.
Get Steve Harvey's book.
All right. That's fire. That's fire. That's fire. That one is fire.
Thank you. Thank you for your perspectives on that. What role should women play, and why is it that we are so silent? Thank you. Now we're going to move into the more pointed questions that are more specific to your areas of expertise. And there's a little sweet spot if you hold the mic just right, that people in the back as well as people in the front are able to hear you just right. I know that rhymed, but I didn't do it on purpose. But we're going to start from this side with Dr. Brian McCodman. And again, you can please pay attention to our SGA president here with Mr. Dyron, because we are trying to make sure that we get everyone's questions in. I'll give you the same amount of time to answer. As a psychologist, you are fully aware of the psychosocial and other factors that contribute to unhealthy human behavior. There have been an increase in black-on-black crime, not only in our community, but we're speaking mainly about our community, and violent crime against women by men. From a psychosocial perspective, what factors tend to lead to black-on-black crime in our community and why?
Okay, so I want to look at this from two perspectives. One is, thinking about youth. But in general, the people who are most vulnerable to crime are people who live in close proximity with one another, right? So whether that's neighbors, whether that's, schoolmates, whether that's intimate partners, those are generally speaking going to be the victims and perpetrators of crime. So when we think about black-on-black crime, it's because these are people who live in proximity to one another, who engage with one another on a daily basis, and therefore are victims and perpetrators of crime. Staying with the youth perspective, delinquency is something that is very, very common, especially during the teenage years. I saw one study looking at this a couple of years ago that said something like 95% of young people, think about this, that's nearly everyone, will experiment at some time, on some level, big or small, with a delinquent act. With stealing something, with, the minor, with cutting class, with smoking weed, with, breaking and entering, with injuring study, 95%. But only about 5% actually go on to a lifestyle of delinquency or later criminal behavior. So it's what happens in that interim period. It's how we deal with delinquency as a society. And when we tend, I'm thinking again about young men because that's sort of the focus, when we tend to lump people together, right, and say that group is bad, those are bad people, you know, they come from a bad area, that is a problem. And I think that our challenge is to deal with the bad acts in ways that allow people to be diverted into productive, socially useful activity, but that don't condemn them as people, as a group. You have to treat people as individuals. You have to think about what is motivating for this individual. What are the causes for this individual moving off the wrong track? And you need community investment and programs and times. This really takes adult effort and intervention in order to make these diversionary programs succeed. But I think when that happens, there's good success. You also need to involve families in this. So you can't just deal with young people without their families and then send them back to a difficult situation and expect your successes to hold. So I think we need to think about this. There's a lot to say in a very short period of time. So maybe we'll come back with more for your questions.
And again, there will be time for interaction. So we're just getting into the questions so that we can get the thoughts out there. And I'll move on to the next question. We'll keep going that way. Judge Watlington, in your new role as a family court judge, dealing with all kinds of family disputes, including domestic violence, divorce, child abuse, and so on, family court judges have been heavily criticized for many of their decisions by women's groups. For example, Dr. Therese Hanna and Barry Goldstein, JD, state in their book on domestic violence, abuse, and child custody, legal strategies and policy issues that, quote, in a trend that started in the 1980s and increasingly since then, family court judges across the U.S. have ordered thousands and thousands of children into unsupervised visitation with abusive biological fathers, end quote. First of all, is this a trend in the Virgin Islands as well? And that's a simple yes or no question, and then I'll further with other.
It's never a simple yes or no. I don't know that that's a trend in the Virgin Islands or anywhere else for that matter. I haven't seen it, any data. However, I would say that, unless you want to follow up with a question.
I do. You can go ahead and say your statement and I'll follow up.
I would say that under the laws of the Virgin Islands, visitation is prohibited by or with a parent who has a record of domestic violence or conviction for domestic violence.
Okay, thank you. And what are the other factors that contribute to delinquency and incarceration of our young black males?
Well, I don't want to talk some more about the visitation, but
yeah, you could go ahead and do that. Add on some others.
I do believe that the perception that there is a perception about unsupervised visits, and I believe it may be a misperception, and that oftentimes visitations with persons who are guilty of domestic violence are in fact supervised or not allowed at all. And first and foremost, the court is required to consider the best interests of the child or the children involved. and the safety of the children and the victim of the domestic violence. So I don't think that there is a trend here in the Virgin Islands, and obviously anyone who witnesses domestic violence suffers incredibly psychologically, academically, and we see cases where children who have experienced constant abuse in the household, whether verbal, whether see the abuse between their parents, or are themselves victims of abuse, that effect translates into the schools, and that's why we have schools dealing with so much more than just academics. And you know, it's a reality now in our educational system that we have to provide wraparound services. We have to deal with the whole child, and because children come to school with all kinds of issues and burdens, and we have to recognize them, and we can't just expect every child to be in the same place, but deal with the child wherever that child may be and address and provide the services that they need. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
You actually did, because you went into some of the other factors. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You want to test the other mic, Pastor Hazell?
Test it.
Okay. Pastor Hazell, churchgoers, scholars, and others in our community are saying that our churches, our pastors, are not being responsive to the needs of the members in our congregations and are not addressing issues affecting our community. The pastors or priests are not addressing the real issues, such as alcoholism, drug addiction, promiscuity, child molestation and neglect, incest, violence, depression, and other mental illnesses. Our community, particularly women and children, are suffering due to gun and domestic violence by men, and there are few or no outlets. The silence is deafening. What are your thoughts about these topics, gun and domestic violence in our community?
Well, that was a loaded question, wasn't it? But I'll just deal with the last part that you just said about what's my thoughts about gun and domestic violence, and of course, whatever, it always reaches the church, and everyone. It affects the entire community. I'm sure if I ask a question, if you have to raise your hand, if someone you know, whether it's a family member or relative or friend, has been impacted by gun violence or domestic violence, I'm sure everyone can raise their hands in here. So it goes around. I mean, it happens to all. And of course, when that happens, then it comes to the church, because they come to church for prayer. They come to church because somebody sends somebody to pray for them. Sometimes people don't even know that they're being prayed for, but a sister or a cousin will say, I have a co-worker, a friend, a relative whose child has been shot, and please pray for them. We're praying for them. You may not know, the person, the family may not know, but yes, we are praying for them. And so you don't know what's going on in the background, but yes, prayers are being heard on their behalf. And no, the church is not silenced. Turn up the volume. We're in every area of your life. We're on the talk show. I mean, on the radio. My husband loves the radio, guys. I'm telling a secret. He's on WSTA. But not just only him, but the churches are out there. We have some youth groups, and earlier I was talking to the judge, and she was like, this is wonderful. I need to get together to find out a directory so that the people could know, to be directed to the different youth groups so they can be involved. We do have youth camps. We have mission trips where our young people are going on to learn that. I think, Camille, your daughter went on one, and people go to different, where they get to see other cultures, other lifestyles. There's someone else that needs help, compassion. So the church is not silent. far from being so. We're out there in the community, we're praying, we're offering a ray of hope, because we know that these are the dark times. These are times, perilous times, as you can say, because people are just, like I said, they are lovers of themselves, disobedient to parents, that's the scripture, unthankful, unholy. But with prayer, we can change things. With our faith, with our sense of spirituality, things can change. Things can turn around. We have to have a ray of hope. If somebody come to me and tell me all the things that are going on, I can't say, oh my, oh that is so sad. No, I have to offer them a ray of hope. That's the role that we play as Christians, as spiritual people. We offer a ray of hope.
Thank you. Ms. Burke, as an educator, the majority of educators in the public schools are women. And our male students make up a significant percentage of students, specifically in the lower and middle grades. Yet more of the male students are at risk for dropping out of school. More are being suspended and expelled for violent behavior or arrested for criminal activity. And some are in alternative programs. What are some contributing factors to this trend?
First, we can't negate the fact that poverty is definitely a contributing factor. When you stop and you analyze the economic structure of the Virgin Islands, you quickly come to find out that in the Virgin Islands, currently families are experiencing the poverty rate of 29.9% as reported on Kids Count, which is double the national average. So could you imagine right now a single mother having to be forced with the situation of finding means to be able to pay her rent, still being able to deal with the WAPA bill, still being able to provide for her children? Right off the bat, it presents a series of challenges. So now you find yourself taking 2 jobs to be able to provide, put bread and butter. We're talking about bread and butter issues, and we're just keeping it real. Bread and butter issues on the table. You can't do that and still be an active participant in what we call parenting. It just doesn't work. So that's a contributing factor. Let's also talk about the fact that poverty has a direct correlation with health. If you do not have a job that provides adequate health care, you are at risk for your child to be born with not having adequate medical services. So right off the bat, even before the child is born, you are at a disadvantage. Next, let's take a look at the fact of family structure. In the Virgin Islands alone, 41% of our families are led by single women. What's wrong with that picture? Well, it goes right back to the questions that were posed before, the choices that we make, some which we contribute, some which we are just imposed. But still, 41% of our families are faced of living with just a mom as a sole source of income. Let's talk about the fact that a lot of our children, even before entering school, the research shows that 1 out of every 5 children entering kindergarten in public school system do not have adequate skills. They're not proficient because they have not been exposed to a parent reading to you all the time, being sent over to daycare as far as getting an early education. I'm noticing that when my minute is up, but I need to keep on talking because we're going to keep it real. Certainly, I cannot diffuse the fact that the drastic influences and change with the media, as I may mention before, the family structure, the church, the peers, the sports, rap, TV, has resulted in many of our children devaluing the importance of an education and subsequently leading to dropping out. In addition to that, let's talk about the fact that 17% of our children right here in the Virgin Islands, you would find them in the corner between the ages of 16 to 19, which are classified as detached youth. They're not attached to no schools, they're not attached to any workforce, they're not attached to any higher education. So then that comes right back to the question, what are we as policy stakeholders doing? What are we as members of our community doing to eradicate that situation? And lastly, let's not negate the fact that absent fathers really play a vital role in what's going on in our community. If you fail to show love to a child from the time it is conceived, and then when you give birth, you are no longer there, you are nothing but a sperm donor, as our panel had mentioned before, then what message are we conveying to that child? A message of neglect, a message of abandonment, which subsequently creates a lot of deep-rooted issues that our young black men right here in our community are facing. So when you're asking me in terms of what are the contributing factors, I could go on, but in a nutshell, I've stated them to you tonight.
Thank you. I think you've all shared a mouthful already in that, the main question. This other question is really dealing more with strategies and our responsibilities. So we'll start back over from this side and go to Dr. Todman. What strategies, can the mic be passed down to her? What strategies did you propose to address how our community deals with the problems from a psychosocial perspective?
Well, I guess I think that although the problems, as clearly delineated, are both socioeconomic and psychosocial, the strategies for addressing them are not always psychosocial. They may be more political, right? And in terms of policy. And so, you know, one of the things that I've been watching in the national scene is an increase in activism on the part of ordinary citizens. And if you care about an issue, you get involved. And I think that that's really the number one strategy, that people have to say, we care about this and we want to make a difference. I think the things that are going to make a difference, I'm going to stick my neck out a little bit. So you might want to chop it off or not, we'll see. One is parenting. We have to relearn, in a way, how to parent. And I think a lot of people have said this. I learned from my students, and one of the most popular areas of research that my students want to do are looking at parenting styles in the Virgin Islands and in the Caribbean. You know, they like Diana Baumrin's parenting styles, where you can differentiate between permissive, neglectful, authoritarian, and authoritative parenting. And in all of the student research that I've seen, where they go out and interview people and they use instruments and so on, we never find authoritative parenting as a style. What is authoritative parenting? It means a combination of high in warmth and high in clear expectations, right? So we tend to either go from neglectful or permissive to authoritarian. Do what I do, don't ask me any, do what I say, don't ask me any questions, you know, and we don't have that model in between where we need to explain to our young people what is expected from them and hold them consistently to high standards of behavior and make sure that we follow through, you know, when we discipline our children. Huge issue, okay? The other issue is, I think, that given the circumstances socioeconomically of poverty, of high single parenthood, and so on, we need, as a policy position, programs that support men in staying involved with their children, mothers in having resources for daycare. You know, we need to, as a community, let our legislators know that we want programs that are going to provide children with after-school programs. What happens between 2:30 or 3 and 6 o'clock when the parent comes home? If your children are on the street, they're going to get into trouble. You know, so those kinds of issues, things that supplement, you know, the education and information that our children have. So I would say, you know, those are the two things. We need to change our our parenting style to really relearn how to parent, and we need to advocate for more community programs and do some of this ourselves to support parenting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Judge Smith-Watlington. Similarly, as I said, we're staying on the strategies and responsibilities. What is the responsibility of the family court as it pertains to preventing or reducing delinquency and incarceration of our young black males?
The focus of the family court is to rehabilitate the minors who appear before the court. However, as I said before, by the time they get to family court, it's almost too late. But notwithstanding, family court tries to fashion a program to enable the child to redeem his or herself. And whether that may be finishing school, getting counseling, and learning from the experience really is the ultimate goal. However, I think the problem, as has been said before, it's really a community problem. The court cannot do it alone. And I believe that some of the strategies that we must begin to utilize, because poverty, while it is a contributing factor, I mean, our parents were poor. My mother was a single mother, and I'm sure many of you in here had single parents who were raised by single parents. But it was a different time. And I believe the time, in the past you had strong family connections. Oftentimes, these children don't know their family. You may have several children in a household who have different fathers, and as a result, they have different grandparents and aunts and uncles and so on, and they don't know each other. And you have children who are engaged in battles in school and in gangs, and they're cousins, they're close relatives. Mm-hmm. So the breakdown of the family really is a very important change that has occurred in our community. So we need to try to restore family connections. We need, as mothers and as parents, to listen more to our children and provide incentives, rewards to them. Punishment is not the only answer. And oftentimes, even in our schools, many of our policies are too punitive. And that's why we have so many kids who give up, who are suspended. That's what they want to be. They want to be home. They don't want to be in school. And we suspend them and we give them exactly what they want. So we have to think about doing things differently. I believe males learn differently. They're more visual. I'm not an educator, but I serve on the Board of Education because I see that there is a genuine connection between education and crime. And I always say, the more, if we invest in high quality education, we will experience a high quality of living.
Thank you, thank you. Again, we're just moving along because we want to give the audience enough time to interact with their questions. Pastor Hazell, what role should religious leaders play, particularly female pastors, in bringing these issues to the forefront? What strategies should they use in effective change?
Well, I believe I addressed it a little earlier, because we have to have that conversation. We have to teach, we have to empower. We can't be afraid of the tough topics like domestic violence. It happens in the churches also. And maybe it might be because we were taught that women are supposed to be submissive And so some men take that and they really, you know, they are the leaders, they are the head of the home. But in Ephesians 5, it says that husband is supposed to love your wife just as Christ loved the church. And it said that, that if you love your own wife as you love your body, he who loves his own wife as he loves his own body will not abuse his own body. And so they take the first part and they don't take that part. So that's a scripture right there that shows that it should be abusive. And so we have to make sure that we teach. In our Bible studies, on talk shows, we teach, we tell them, we empower them. Not just only women in church, but the women out there. Not to allow yourself to be abused. No, you're better than this. You're worth more than this. Know yourself. And so in every arena, wherever we can, the Sunday schools, in our mission groups, our prayer groups, the newspaper, the internet. I call my husband the internet pastor. If you ever, he probably would befriend you. But he'll let you, the scriptures are out there. He gives encouraging word. The word is out there to come against all these social problems that we're facing. How to empower ourselves. How to move beyond where we are. And having hope to know that there is a better way. So we teach and we empower at in every arena.
Thank you. And again, what strategies, Ms. Burke, would you recommend as an educator to the policymakers, the administrators, so on? What, in addition to the strategies, sometimes we know there's support needed. What support should be provided so that these strategies are going to be able to be dealt with? That maybe aren't currently acknowledged to change the trend.
All right. Well, when this question was posed, I took the opportunity to do some research, and I came across some alarming statistics in one particular article called the Children's Defense Fund, where it indicated that nationally, 1 out of every 3 black males and 1 out of every 6 Latin boys born in 2001 are at risk of imprisonment during their lifetime. So with those alarming statistics right off the bat, I'm saying, well, the system is already predestined what this child is going to encounter. How do we shift it around so that we can create barriers so that these things won't come to light, these statistics won't come to light? There's certainly right now a model called the cradle to prison pipeline, which marginalizes the lives of our children, resulting in imprisonment and premature deaths. For me personally, I actually internalize this because in my line of work, I've had experience of losing within the past 12 years 50 young males here in the Virgin Islands that came from families where mothers did not even have enough to bury them. And it's gotten to a point that when they see me, I'll share something with them such as, and I'm real frank with the parent, we've tried this intervention, it did not work. We've tried this intervention, it did not work. You've already made it to YRC, and obviously that was not rehabilitation at all. So now we're back again. The next step is the grave. So if you don't change your ways, you're obviously going to continue into a path of destruction. We understand now that it's a system where it's very calculating, where now they're taking, if a child is not reading at grade level by the time he or she is in 3rd grade, they use those numbers to calculate how many prisons they're getting ready to build. This is something that our community needs to create a sense of awareness and open up their eyes in terms of what's really happening to our young black males. When we're talking about that nationally, black youths are more than 4.5 times likely than their white counterparts to be detained in a juvenile facility for nonviolent crimes. Then you have to question again the policies that are in place to continue to keep our children in this predicament. Certainly, we cannot run away from the fact that we have to invest money in our children. If we don't put it in the front end, we're going to invest it in the back end. It costs us approximately $10,000 a year to educate a child. Does anyone know how much it costs to keep a child incarcerated? $51,000 to be exact. All right? So what's wrong with this picture? The age, we were very fortunate that policymakers decided to step up their game and increase the age of compulsory education from 16 to 18. But one of the variables that they forgot to include is these children tried it before and they dropped out and it didn't work. What can we do different? What innovative programs? Right now, if a teacher thinks that she's going to capture her audience with chalk and talk practices that are antiquated, it's certainly not going to work. What's been part of the system that continues to break away why our children continue to have these issues in terms of dropping out of school, continue to get themselves involved in gangs, continue to find themselves in and out of jail, is the simple fact that we as teachers have already rejected them. The system has already set you and labeled you as a failure. Yet, we are not astute enough to understand that these are the kind of children that need the best teachers, the best technical equipment, the best thing that the Department of Education has to offer so that we can continue to embrace and fulfill the legacy that our ancestors have left behind. We were queens, we were kings, we have known it all along. Yet that identity has been gone. So we need to go back and say, you know what? We need to empower our children in the best ways through promising strategies in the field of education. So we need to bring it right back and say, you know what? Invest in the front end, because clearly, as we all know, and as we read the papers every single day, it's not working the way that we've been doing. Right. Yep.
Thank you all. I know everyone in here felt everything that you said as if it was coming straight from their hearts. And I do understand and we do appreciate that. If you have anything you'd like to utilize before we get into engaging the audience to wrap up within a minute, please feel free to go right ahead in any particular order.
I'd just like to say that it's good that we have these kind of forums to discuss these issues that are plaguing our community, but talk is just as good as it is talk. We have to take action. So this is a call of action to you, to say, you know what, you're UVI students. If you're really considering the field of education, education is not a job that, hey, I want to become a teacher because I have my summers off. Education, if you're really going to go on ahead and delve into this career, it is a career that comes from the heart. It is a career that it is really and truly a wonderful one because you are influencing and shaping the minds of our children. And if it's not in your heart, please don't bother. Save the government money, save your parents' money, and do something else.
I just want to sort of say one thing to sort of give this context about change, and then we talk about policy and the need for people to get active. And I just want to underscore the fact that all of us, our young people and our older people, as human beings, are psychologically and socially sort of primed for human interaction. And that ultimately is what we need. And it often doesn't really matter what avenue you use, as long as you're not destructive, right? But that showing an interest one-to-one is what people really need to make them feel valued and to motivate them to be valuable people. So that our children need someone to believe in them, and they need something to believe in. I guess that's what I want to leave people with. And the best vehicle for that is another person, right? And that, therefore, any of us can have an impact on any other person if we take the time and we make the effort to do that.
you have a question, send the mic, please.
Good night. My question, I was listening to all of you, and basically, the one thing all of you were like agreeing on is that we need more spirituality. Like, we lost our sense of self, basically. So, in my opinion, like, the Caribbean is kind of counterproductive in this, because you're saying, you know, you want us to be successful and all of this, but at the same time, you're telling young men, like, when they grow their hair past a certain point, I mean, it may sound kind of trivial, but like, when you grow your hair past a certain point, you're like excluded from certain jobs, and you know, people have a false pretense about you. So, I want to know, why is there such a stigma against like certain hairstyles, growing your hair a certain length, and also why isn't there like more encouragement, like, because if you're being told you have to look a certain way to be successful, how can you expect young men to find that deeper, you know, spiritual thing that, you know, they lost touch with?
While it's fresh, we'll address that. Let me just quickly just hit it, so that I'm sure everybody else wants to say something. So, yes, we want you to find your sense of spirituality, and I don't believe that just hearing all the wonderful other women up here talk, maybe in the community they might look at you in a different way, but I just embrace our ethnicity and how our Caribbean men just want you to take care of yourself. You can have your hair all the whichever style you would want to have it. And once you're clean, I don't think anyone would really frown on you, but of course that's coming from me. That's my belief, and I'm thinking that's everybody else's belief, but I don't know how you might be perceived out there. She's like, I got this, I got this. Yes, you might be perceived out there in the community a little different way, but once you're clean, for the most part, I don't think you're going to get it that much. Let me go.
I'm going to let my sister go.
Because I know Ms. Burke is going to handle this well. But, you know, I think that what you have in your heart and what you have in your mind really in the end counts more than how you look. You know, you once you have your education, you know, people can't take that from you. You know, so, you know, how you look becomes trivial, and it's what's in your head that really matters. You know, initially, yes, in the real world, people expect some level of conformity. However, everyone has to make their own path and find their own place. And maybe if you want to do what you want to do, it means that you may not be able to work for somebody else, but you can work for yourself. So, you know, it's about putting yourself in a place where you want to be. I have worked with attorneys who have locks. So, you know, locks now have become a style. You know, so again, it's about what you have in your heart, what you have in your brain.
This is Real Talk, and I'm glad that you posed that question. 17 years ago, I relocated to the Virgin Islands. Unbeknownst to me, I thought that wearing dreadlocks, because I'm in the Caribbean, was culturally accepted. Well, reality, chicky check, check. It just didn't work out. So I wore dreadlocks, and it's so funny because Dr. Latisa said, when I walked in, she said, I didn't recognize you because you don't have your locks. Yeah. My locks were all the way down to my back. So I understand, because I too have experiences. I've experienced that within our community. I remember moving here in 1996, registering my daughter, who also wears dreadlocks, at the 7-day school. When she took her placement test, she wore her hair in a bun with a scrunchie. So her braids are her locks are very thin, so it almost looked as though she had micro braids. When we went back to pay for registration and book fee, my daughter wore her hair out. And it was then that it really dawned on me when the administrator of the school proceeded to share with me that is what they called unacceptable in their school. And in the 20th century back then, I couldn't understand what the term unacceptable was to just a mere hairstyle, because where I came from, people wear their hair colors green, orange, red, blue, white. It doesn't really matter. You're able to be a contributing member of society, and if such, you're just embraced and let you do your thing. It was shocking to me, but that served as a learning experience where I had to use that as a stepping stone to create myself to be the woman that I am today. I said, you know what, if I educate myself in the system and be able to understand what the system is being asked of me to do, I'm able to be able to embrace and contribute back to the community and change that way of thinking. I wore my dreadlocks for approximately 13 years, and within the ranks of education, I gradually moved, wearing my dreadlocks the same way, because you know what? You can take away their hairstyle, you can take away the clothes, you can take away everything, but no one can take away what you have in here.
That young man that spoke, imagine this, that's my first cousin's son. It could be my son. And what he's talking about is what I went through, and I'm way older than he is. Growing up, when Rastafari first started coming in, they were the pariah. Because only Rastafari at that time, it was the first time I felt proud to be a black man. Those were the only black men in my community who wholly embraced their Africanness. So what you have is a young man who is busted with testosterone. We have a lot of energy, a lot of aggression. And you want some guy to come and tell me to worship God in Latin? You are, as Dr. Juanja in his books, The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, we are being sissified because no fault of women, but from the time you're young in a single-headed household, through school, all your teachers are female, they expect you with your energy to sit down and be like a girl. There's nothing wrong with a girl, but we have different energy levels. And as Judge Watlington, as she indicated, a lot of times men are visual. So sometimes some of the problems is that we are trying to educate everyone in this cookie-cut approach, not realizing that you have to simply maybe go back to separate boys' schools and female schools, because we learn differently. And this society, as Curtis Mayfield say, you know, brother, the hunt is on, and you're the prey. This society, they don't accept a natural black man. Whether it's a majority black society or majority black white society. And we need that. Now some of you sisters, I mean, first of all, when I came here, I felt a little objectified. You know, women perspective on black men. I understand it's too So I did come here with a little, not a chip on my shoulder, but a little tense. Right. So I really gotta sit. Right? But I understand, I respect it. Maybe we need the black male money. You know, but the thing is, you have to understand that we think different. In this society,